The Grand Ballroom of the Willard Hotel hummed with the low murmur of Washington's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast sterile white light over a sea of dress uniforms and designer gowns. It was the Annual Valor Recognition Gala, a night for the nation to pin medals on its heroes and for the powerful to see and be seen. General Marcus Thorne stood at the edge of the dais, his posture ramrod straight. The fabric of his dress blues, crisp and immaculate, felt like a second skin. His face was a mask of stoic neutrality, but beneath the surface, the machinery of a lifetime of combat was spinning. He watched the crowd as he would an enemy formation, cataloging faces, noting the subtle shifts in alliances. His son, Julian, was the evening's golden boy. Young, handsome, ambitious, he was about to receive the silver STA, or for an operation in the Levant that had, according to the official narrative, been a triumph of courage and leadership. Julian stood at the podium, basking in the applause. His eyes found his father in the crowd, and for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something that wasn't pride, but contempt, crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by a calculated, media-trained smile. "Did I stand here tonight?" Julian's voice boomed through the speakers, "Not just for myself, but for every soldier who fights for this nation's freedom. My father, General Thorne, taught me everything I know about duty and honor." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, and Marcus felt the faintest prickle of unease. Julian was never one for humility, but tonight, "I must speak a difficult truth," Julian continued, his voice dropping to a solemn register. "The strength of our militia relies on absolute integrity. And when that integrity is compromised at the highest levels, is a cancer that threatens everything we hold." A collective intake of breath swept through the room. The air grew thick, electric with anticipation. And Marcus saw his wife, Evelyn, freeze in her seat, her champagne glass halfway to her lips. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a fear he hadn't seen in decades. The Basta RDS were making their move. Julian's eyes locked with his father's. The contempt was now a blazing, public fired at General Marcus Thorne. "My father is a relic, a man whose reputation was built on a foundation of lies. The operation I was part of, the one for which I am being recognized, was only successful because I broke protocol. I followed my conscience, not the compromise RDLY orders of a man too afraid to take a real risk." He held up a tablet. "I have here the operational logs from Project Nightfall. They show a general who, for 3 consecutive missions, abandoned his troops to the enemy to secure his own escape." Murmurs erupted. It was a shocking, treasonous lie, and Marcus felt the heat on his neck, but he remained still as a statue. He was a predator, and he knew the scent of an ambush. This was well planned, a betrayal executed with surgical precision. "My father is a RD," Julian Declay read, the word hanging in the air like a curse. "He is a disgrace to the uniform, and I, his own son, am here to ensure the Department of Defense knows the truth. I will not stand by and let a fraud be celebrated. I am requesting a full inquiry into his entire CA rear. Tonight, I expose the truth." A young officer stepped forward, Colonel Vance, Julian's protege. "The evidence is irrefutable, General," Vance said, his voice loud enough for the front rows to hear. "The logs are re-authenticated by Melita regrade encryption. We have witness testimony from the soldiers who were there. You are re-finished, so that..." Marcus looked at them. The crowd was a blur of shocked faces. His own son, his subordinate, his legacy, a pile of ash at his feet. He allowed himself one tiny, almost imperceptible breath. "I see," Marcus said. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble that cut through the noise. It wasn't loud, but it was the kind of voice that commanded absolute silence. And silence he received. "You have Prepper read well, Julian. A good soldier anticipates the enemy's next move." He looked at his son, his expression devoid of anger. It was worse than anger. It was disappointment. A cold, deadening disappointment. He reached into his inner jacket pocket. The motion was slow, deliberate. He produced a small, black, nondescript USB drive. He held it up between two fingers. I too have a piece of evidence, and Mayor Cuss stated. But mine isn't forged. It is the master key to the very system you claim to have hacked. It contains the real operational logs for Project Nightfall. He saw Julian's mask falter for a moment. The smug confidence dimmed. You see, son, and Mayor Cuss continued, his tone matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. When you plan to stab a general in the back, you had better be sure he doesn't have a knife of his own. You played your hand too, EARL wide. He turned to face the audience, his voice rising with controlled authority. What my son has shown you is a fabrication, a desperate attempt to cover his own incompetence. But let's not get bogged down in my defense. Let us talk about his failures. And Mayor Cuss pressed a button on the drive, and a holographic screen flickered to life above the dais. He had been planning this counterattack for months. He knew a trap when he saw one. He had let them set it, let them get comfortable, so he could spring his own. This is an order issued by Julian Thorne 2 months prior to the alleged heroic operation. An order to withdraw from the village of Al Hassan, leaving a local militia force to be overrun. Those were civilians. He left them to die to preserve his own reputation. The room gasped. It was a much to recur accusation than Kawe dais. It was mass murder by negligence. And this, Mayor Cuss continued, swiping to the next image. This is a video recording from his personal comms unit. In it, he is mocking the very soldiers he claims to have led. He rages their intelligence, their loyalty, and speaks openly of using them as cannon fodder for his political ambitions that the footage played. Julian's voice, arrogant and cruel, filled the silent ballroom. The man on the screen was a stranger to the one standing on the podium. The veneer of heroism shattered completely. And Mayor Cuss turned his back on his son. It was the ultimate dismissal. He addressed the Secretary of Defense, who had been watching from the front table with a face as white as chalk. Secret Mayor Shao, and Mayor Cuss said, I have been aware of this treachery for some time. I have been waiting. I wanted to see how he would go. I wanted to show you the full measure of the rot within my own command. Colonel Vance and his co-conspirators to be placed under arrest immediately for conspiracy and defamation. He took a step closer to his son. Julian was sweating now, his mouth open. The triumph in his eyes was replaced by a primal, animal fear. Are you stripped of your rank, your command, and your security clearance? And Mayor Cuss said, his words RP as shrapnel. You will be escorted out of this building. You will face a court of mayor tile. Your your life as you know it, is over. You are no longer my son. You are a traitor to the uniform you profaned. And Mayor Cuss turned and walked away from the podium. His steps were measured, unhurried. The crowd root for him like a tide of sheep fleeing a wolf. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. The morning sun cast long, accusing shadows across the interrogation rooms of the Pentagon. The atmosphere was stale and sterile, filled with the hum of fluorescent lights. And Mayor Cuss Thorne stood on one side of a one-way mirror, watching Colonel Vance, his former protege, now a wreck of a man. Gone was the crisp, decorated soldier from the night before. In his place sat a disheveled prisoner, stripped of his rank, his tie undone, his face a landscape of anxiety and shame. 2 military police officers flanked him, their stances rigid. Vance's eyes were red-rimmed. He had been in the holding cell for 6 hours. 6 hours of confinement. 6 hours to think about the abyss he had thrown himself into. And Mayor Cuss finally walked in. The click of the door seemed to echo. Vance flinched. Sir, Vance began, his voice a RSE whisper. Sir, I am so sorry. I did not know what I was doing. And Mayor Cuss took a seat opposite him. He did not offer a greeting. He just sat in complete, oppressive silence for a full minute. The clock on the wall ticked with maddening slowness. That you made a choice, Colonel, and Mayor Cuss said, his voice flat. You chose ambition over loyalty. You chose a traitor over a general. Now, you will tell me everything. It was not my idea, Vance pleaded. It was Julian. He promised me a promotion. He promised me command of the Yi Ling Yi SD. He said if I backed his play, the old regime would crumble. He said you were a fossil, holding the Rumei back. He said he had the evidence. He lied to me, he lied to you. And Mayor Cuss repeated, the words dripping with contempt. And you did not have the decency or the intelligence to check. You, a colonel of the United States of Rumei, took the word of a junior officer who was bad-mouthing a 4SDA, our general, and you did not think to verify. You were a fool. He had the data, the access codes. Vance argued, his voice cracking. He had your son's name on the logs. I thought you had truly lost your mind in the field, that you were weak, and Mayor Cuss stated. You saw a chance to profit from a coup, and you took it. That is the kind of man you were, a mercenary, in a uniform. Tell me who else was involved. The administration, the media. Who else was waiting to tear down the structure I have spent 40 years building? Vance hesitated. His loyalty was to Julian, or at least to his own self-preservation. He was calculating his chances. And Mayor Cuss leaned four-way road. He was not threatening him with violence. He was offering him something or worse, the truth. Your son, Julian, Vance said finally. He was not just after a promotion. He was working for someone else. He had backers, political backers. You were a roadblock to the new power structure in Washington. They want the old RD gone. Julian was their champion. Who? And Mayor Cuss demanded. Names, Vance. Give me names, and I will consider allowing you to live out your days in a Melita prison, rather than a federal penitentiary that I do not know all of them, Vance stammered. But he was in contact with the office of Senator Alderman. Alderman's chief of staff, a man named Brock. Brock was funding the Arsich, the forgery. He was the one who brought me in. He said this was bigger than all of us. It was a purge. And Mayor Cuss stood up. You will write it all down. Everything. Every conversation. Every meeting. Every bit of evidence you possess. My staff will be in to take your statement. If I find out you have left anything out, I will ensure you are retried for treason. Do you understand me? Colonel Vance nodded, his head sinking into his hands. And Mayor Cuss walked out, leaving the man to his guilt. He did not feel any satisfaction. He had just gutted a traitor, but he knew Julian was just a puppet. The puppet master was still out there. Later that day, Mayor Cuss was in his private office, a spa RSE room on the top floor of the Pentagon. A single flag stood in the corner. A painting of his father, a veteran of Korea, hung on the wall. He was studying the list Vance had provided. It was a who's who of political power. Senators, lobbyists, even a few Melita brass he considered friends. His phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. It read, the evidence you have is small potatoes. You are still a dead man walking. Enjoy the view while you can, General. Mayor Cuss, STA read at the screen. The enemy was arrogant. They had lost the first battle, but they were already preparing for the second. They were trying to intimidate him. But Mayor Marcus Thorne had been a soldier his entire life. He had faced death with a smile. This was just another form of combat. He activated the encryption on his personal tablet. He accessed a file Marquette Operation Leviathan. It was the contingency plan, the one he had designed for a situation exactly like this. He was no longer just a soldier fighting for his reputation. He was a soldier fighting for the soul of the institution he served. He made a call. It was answered on the first ring. Captain Mills, and Mayor Cuss said, I have a new mission for you. Ready, sir, came the crisp reply. I need a full profile on Senator Alderman's financial network. Everything. I want to know where his money comes from, where it goes, and who handles it. We are going to show the world that this treason does not stop at my son. It goes all the way to the top. He hung up. The counterattack was officially in phase 2. They had tried to assassinate his character in the most public way possible. Now, he was going to turn their own public spectacle into their funeral pyre. The game was afoot. He walked to the window and looked out over the Potomac. The river glinted in the afternoon light, a ribbon of silver cutting through the gray city. He thought about Julian, about Evelyn, about the life he had built, and the people who had conspired to tear it down. He had given everything to this nation, and this was his Road betrayal. Humiliation. A knife in the back from his own blood. But he was not done. He was far from done. He picked up his phone again and dialed a secure line. A voice answered on the second ring. General Thorne, the voice said. We were expecting your call. Then you know why I'm calling? Marcus replied. I need everything on Brock. His background, his connections, his weaknesses. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and who he sleeps with at night. That will take time. That you have 24 hours, Marcus said. And then I'm going to burn this whole thing to the ground. He ended the call and stood in the silence of his office. The weight of the day pressed down on him, but he did not allow himself to feel it. Feeling was a luxury he could not afford. He had to remain RP, focused, relentless. The enemy was patient, but so was he. They had made the first move. Now was his turn. He sat back down at his desk and pulled up the files on Senator Alderman. The man was a snake, a creature of the swamp who had clawed his way to power through bribery and blackmail. He was also CA realist. Alderman had left a trail of financial transactions a mile wide, and Marcus intended to follow it all the way to the source. He began making notes, cross-referencing names, dates, and amounts. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in a diagram. Alderman was funneling money through a series of shell companies, each one more obscure than the last. The money eventually flowed into accounts controlled by the New Dawn Initiative, a think tank that Marcus had never heard of until now. He pulled up the organization's website. It was slick, professional, filled with vague platitudes about national security and corporate governance. It was the kind of front that screamed legitimacy while hiding a rotting core. Marcus had seen 100 like it in his CA rear. They always fell apart when you applied enough pressure. He made a second call, this time to a contact in the Treasury Department. I need a freeze on all accounts linked to the New Dawn Initiative, he said, and I need it done quietly. No media leaks, no court orders, just a quiet administrative hold until I can get what I need. That is highly irregular, our general, the contact replied. So is treason, Marcus said. You can either help me, or you can be investigated alongside them. Your choice. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then the contact sighed. I will see what I can do. Marcus hung up and leaned back in his chair. The pieces were falling into place. He had Vance. He had the evidence. He had the financial trail. All he needed now was the public spectacle to expose it all. The gala had been the opening salvo. The he-ring would be the main event. And after that, he would deliver the killing blow. He looked at the clock. It was NEARLY midnight. He had been working for 18 hours straight. His body ached, his eyes burned, but his mind was as RP as ever. Sleep could wait. There was too much at stake that he stood up and walked to the window one more time. The city lay before him, dark and silent, a labyrinth of power and corruption. Somewhere out there, the men who had tried to destroy him were sleeping peacefully, confident in their victory. They had no idea what was coming. He smiled. It was a cold, dangerous smile, the kind that had made lesser men tremble. They thought they had won. They thought he was finished. They were wrong. The war was just beginning, and Marcus Thorne intended to win it. Senator Alderman's office was a monument to political power. The walls were lined with mahogany, and the air smelled of expensive leather. A massive American flag hung behind his desk, the stars and stripes serving as a backdrop for his reefully crafted image of patriotic gravitas. But to Marcus Thorne, entering this room was like stepping into a snake's nest. Marcus was in a tailored black suit, a stark contrast to the Melita uniform he usually wore. He was here as a civilian, a private citizen, an old man taking a walk. But his presence in the senator's office, unannounced, was a power play. Alderman's chief of staff, a slick-haired man named Brock, tried to intercept him at the door, but Marcus ignored him. He walked right past and sat down in the chair opposite the senator, whose face was a mask of practice, avuncular or concern. General Thorne, Alderman said, rising, this is an unexpected visit. I was just about to have my staff call you. I was deeply concerned by the events of last night. Your son's accusations, a personal tragedy for you. I am sure. Marcus read at him. Cut the bullshit, Senator. I know you are the one pulling the strings. Julian is a pretender. He does not have the intelligence to pull off a stunt like this alone. The alderman's smile did not falter, but his eyes hardened. General, I have no idea what you are talking about. I am a senator. I represent the people. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, bring it four-way road. But to come into my office and make baseless accusations is unfortunate. Baseless? Mayor Cuss leaned four-way road. I have a signed confession from Colonel Vance. He is not a fan of your methods. He was happy to spill his guts to save his own skin. He told me everything about the money, the forgeries, the media so ordination that Alderman's smile faded. He folded his hands on his desk. Vance is a liar. He is a disgraced officer looking for a deal. His words mean nothing. I am not here to debate the meaning of his words, Americus said. I am here to tell you I have already initiated a formal investigation, and I am not limiting it to Julian's actions. I am extending it to the entire political apparatus that supported him. He slid a folder across the desk. It was slim, containing just 3 pieces of paper. This is a preliminary report on your offshore accounts. Specifically, the ones you use to fund organizations that destabilize your political opponents. That alderman's face drained of color. He snatched the folder and flipped it open. His eyes widened. This is a fabrication. I have never seen these records. I have a counterintelligence team in my pocket that is better than the Secret Service, America stated. They are re-tracking your every move, every wire transfer, every encrypted message, every meeting with Brock. I know you're desperate. You are trying to secure your legacy. But you are a Cow RD, Senator. You are hiding behind a uniform you have never worn. Alderman opened his mouth to deny it, but the words died in his throat. He looked at the documents again. His confident political facade was crumbling. He knew a nuclear option when he saw one. What do you want? Alderman asked, his voice a defeated whisper. I want your support, Americus said. Publicly, you will issue a statement denouncing the coup attempt. You will acknowledge that Julian Thorne is a rogue agent acting without any political backing. You will state that you have full faith in my integrity. Alderman shook his head. That would be political suicide. My entire platform is built on Melita reform. If I say you are the ideal, I lose my base. If you do not, Americus said. Rising, I will release this information to the press. Every single piece of data. You will be ruined. You will be remembered as a traitor, not just a corrupt politician. I will destroy you. The senator was caught in a vice. He was cornered, and he knew it. He had no choice. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. I will do it. But this is not over, Thorne. You might have won this round, but you have made a powerful enemy. Americus smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. I have been making powerful enemies for 40 years, Senator. They all ended up in the same place, with their reputation in tatters and their CA rears over. You are no different. He walked out of the senator's office, leaving the man to contemplate his own personal hell. And Mayor Cuss had just demonstrated that he was not just fighting his son. He was fighting the entire system that had tried to consume him. He had struck at the heart of the conspiracy, and he had one. But the war was far from over. The senator's office door slammed shut behind him. It was a sound of finality, a declaration of a victory that was only temporary. The enemies were retreating, but they were regrouping. And Mayor Cuss knew this was just the beginning of the end. He walked through the corridors of the Senate building, his mind already racing ahead to the next move. Alderman was a Cow RD, and Cow RDS always folded under pressure. But the real power behind the conspiracy was still out there, hidden in the shadows. And Mayor Cuss needed to find them and expose them before they could strike again. His phone buzzed. It was Captain Mills. General, we have something. A breakthrough on the financial trail. Talk to me. And Mayor Cuss said, stepping into a quiet alcove, that we traced the money from Alderman's accounts to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, Mills reported. From there, it flows into a network of accounts controlled by a private equity firm based in New York. The firm is called Sterling Capital. Sterling Capital, and Mayor Cuss repeated. I have never heard of them. They a reaffront, sir. Mills continued. We dug deeper. The firm is owned by a holding company that is registered to a man named Richard Rhodes Sterling. He is a former CIA operative who went private 20 years ago. He runs a network of intelligence contractors and political fixers. He is the money man for the New Dawn Initiative. Marcus felt a cold, a righty settle over him. Sterling was the spider at the center of the web. He was the one pulling the strings, using Alderman and Julian as his puppets. He was the one who had orchestrated the entire operation. That I want everything on Sterling, Massachusetts, Marcus said. His history, his associates, his weaknesses. I want to know where he lives, where he works, and who he via RS. That we are already on it, sir, Mills replied. But there is something else. Sterling is planning a meeting tomorrow night. He is bringing together all the key players in the conspiracy. Alderman, Brock, even a few milliliter rebrass. It is a summit to coordinate their next move. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Where to a private estate in Virginia, sir. We are getting the exact coordinates now. Good, Marcus said. I want surveillance on that location. Every entrance, every exit, every CAR that arrives. And I want a team ready to move on my command. Understood, sir. Marcus ended the call and stood in the silence of the alcove. The pieces were coming together faster than he had anticipated. The enemy was gathering, confident in their strength, that he was closing in. They thought they were the hunters. They were about to in that they were the prey. He walked back into the main corridor, his steps steady and purposeful. The game had changed. He was no longer just defending himself. He was going on the offensive. The meeting tomorrow night was his chance to strike at the heart of the conspiracy, to expose every single player in one decisive blow. He thought about Julian, about the betrayal that had rooted all. His son had been used, manipulated by men who saw him as nothing more than a tool. Marcus felt a flicker of pity, but it was quickly extinguished by cold resolve. Julian had made his choice. He had chosen ambition over family, power over loyalty. There was no going back. Marcus stepped out of the Senate building and into the CL evening air. The city sprawled before him, a maze of power and deceit. He was just one man, but he had the weight of 40 years of service behind him. He had faced worse enemies than these. He had survived WARS, assassinations, and political purges. He would survive this too. He got into CAR and drove in the night, his mind already planning the next move. The summit was tomorrow. The trap was set. All he had to do was spring it. The day of the public hearing arrived. The cavernous hearing room of the HART Senate office building was packed. Journalists from every major outlet were crammed into the rows of chairs, their laptops open, their fingers hovering over keyboard RDS. It was a media circus, the final act of a drama that had gripped the nation. Marcus sat at the witness table, his uniform impeccable. His medals gleamed under the hot RSH television lights. He was a fortress of stoicism. Across from him, the Senate Med Services Committee was arrayed like a firing squad. Julian Thorne sat in the gallery with his entourage of lawyers. He looked haggard, his confidence shattered, but there was still a spark of defiance in his eyes. He was holding on to the belief that he could somehow salvage his reputation, that his father would fail. The committee chairman, a pugnacious senator from the Midwest, banged his gavel. This hearing is called to order. We are here to investigate the allegations of misconduct and dereliction of duty leveled against General Marcus Thorne by his son, Captain Julian Thorne, and to assess the validity of the evidence presented. General Thorne, you of the charges against you. Marcus stood. Chairman, I am of the defamatory statements made by my son and his co-conspirators. I am here to present my defense. The floor is yours, General, the chairman said. Marcus walked to the podium, his movements deliberate. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket. I have here the complete, unedited operational logs for Project Nightfall. These logs have been verified by the Department of Defense's Inspector General. They prove that the claims made against me are fraudulent. He plugged the drive into a computer on the table. A screen behind him flickered to life, displaying raw data and time-stamped entries. The room fell into a hushed silence as the evidence scrolled across the display. As you can see, Marcus continued, the logs show that I was the commander of that operation and that I followed every protocol. My son's accusations, based on forged documents, created to SMEA are my name in Advance's own CA rear. A murmur rippled through the room. Julian was on his feet, shouting, "This is a cover-up. My father is using his influence to manipulate the evidence." The chairman slammed his gavel. "Captain Thorne, you will be silent or you will be removed from this chamber." Marcus ignored his son's outburst. He turned to face the committee. "This is not just about my reputation. This is about the integrity of our Melita Re. A man willing to lie about his own father for personal gain is a man unworthy of wearing the uniform of the United States Army. He has revealed himself to be a traitor." He looked directly at Julian. His eyes were like steel. "You are a disgrace, son. You have betrayed me, your brothers in ARMS, and this nation. Your name will be associated with treason for the rest of your life." Marcus turned back to the committee. "I am requesting a full investigation into Senator Alderman's role in this conspiracy. I have evidence that he was the financial and political architect of this attempted coup. Senator Alderman, who was sitting in the front row, looked like he had just swallowed a wasp. His face was pale. He was trapped. The chairman's face was grim. "General Thorne, this is a serious allegation." "Do you have proof that I do, sir?" Marcus said. "I have copies of wire transfers, encrypted emails, and witness testimony. The same proof I used to secure Senator Alderman's reluctant operation." The committee room erupted into chaos. Alderman's aides were scrambling. Julian was shouting. The journalists were typing furiously. It was the perfect storm. Marcus stood still amidst the storm. He had laid his CARDS on the table. He had exposed the corruption, the treachery, and the lies. He had done what he had to do. The rest was up to the system. He picked up the flash drive. "This evidence will be submitted to the committee for review. I have nothing more to say." He sat down. The hearing was effectively over. He had delivered a fatal blow to his enemies, but he knew it was only a matter of time before the battle continued. The forces he had exposed were too powerful to be defeated by a single blow. They would regroup. They would try again. He had to be ready. The chairman banged his gavel again, calling for order. The room slowly settled, but the tension remained palpable. Alderman was on his feet, trying to speak, but his voice was drowned out by the noise. Marcus watched him with cold detachment. The senator was a broken man, his political CA rear in ruins. But he was just a pawn. The real players were still out there. Marcus turned his gaze to the gallery. Julian was being restrained by two security officers, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Marcus saw something he had never seen in his son before. Fear are real, primal fear are. Julian knew he was finished. The Melita Re-CA rear he had sacrificed everything for was gone. His reputation was destroyed. His future was a void. Marcus felt no pity. Julian had made his choice. He had chosen to betray his family, his country, and his own honor. There was no redemption for a man like that. The chairman finally restored order. "The committee will take a brief recess to review the evidence presented," he announced. "We will reconvene in 1 hour." Marcus stood and walked out of the room, flanked by his security detail. The hallway was crowded with reporters, shouting questions, thrusting microphones in his face. He ignored them all. He walked with his head high, his expression unreadable. He found a quiet corner and pulled out his phone. "Captain Mills," he said, "the hearing is going as planned. Alderman is finished. Julian is finished. But we are not done. I need you to move on the surveillance of the estate. I want to know who is meeting there tonight." "Understood, sir," Mills replied. "The team is already in position. We are retracking all incoming vehicles." "Good," Marcus said. "Keep me updated." But he ended the call and leaned against the wall. The weight of the day pressed down on him, but he refused to let it show. He had been in battle before. and he knew the importance of maintaining a calm exterior. Panic was a luxury he could not afford. He thought about the summit tonight. Sterling, the CIA operative turned fixer, was gathering the conspirators to plan their next move. They thought they were safe, hidden away in their private estate. They had no idea that Marcus was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The hour passed quickly. Marcus returned to the he-ring room, his composure intact. The committee filed back in, their faces somber. The chairman took his seat and banged the gavel. General Thorne, the chairman said, "We have reviewed the evidence you submitted. It is clear that the allegations against you are without merit. The committee finds no basis for the charges leveled by Captain Julian Thorne. Furthermore, we are referring the matter of Senator Alderman's involvement to the Department of Justice for further investigation." A wave of applause rippled through the room. Marcus stood and nodded to the committee. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the committee's thorough review of the evidence." He turned and walked out of the room, his steps steady. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. He had exposed the conspiracy, but the conspirators were still at large. Sterling was still out there, planning his next move. Marcus needed to find him and stop him before he could strike again. The hallway was empty now, the reporters having moved on to their next story. Marcus walked alone, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He pulled out his phone and dialed Mills. "The summit is happening tonight," he said. "I want to be there, sir." "That is extremely risky," Mills replied. "We do not know the full security situation at the estate. That I am aware of the risks," Marcus said. "But I need to see their faces. I need to hear their plans with my own ears. I will be there. Prepare a team to extract me if necessary." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Mills spoke. "Understood, sir. I will have a team ready." Marcus ended the call and walked out of the Senate building. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. The night ahead was dark and uncertain, but Marcus Thorne had never been afraid of the dark. He had been fighting in the shadows for 40 years. Tonight, he would face his enemies on their own ground, and he would win. The corridors of the Pentagon were empty at 2 in the morning. The silence was broken only by the steady hum of the ventilation system. Marcus walked alone, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous halls. He was heading to a meeting room reserved for the highest-level intelligence briefings. But this briefing was different. It was personal. He entered the room, a small, windowless space with a single table and 4 chairs. A woman was already seated. She was in her late 40s, with sharp features and a no-nonsense expression. She was dressed in a RK business suit, but her posture was military. She was Director S.A. Vance, the head of the NSA's Domestic Surveillance Division, and she was his ally. "General," she said, nodding, "I have looked over the data you provided. It is as you suspected. The conspiracy runs deeper than just aldermen. How deep?" Marcus asked, taking a seat across from her. "Alderman is a puppet," she said, sliding a tablet across the table. "He is being controlled by a think tank called the New Dawn Initiative. They are a collection of former intelligence officers, private military contractors, and political operatives. Their goal is to dismantle the current military leadership and replace it with a more pliable, corporate-friendly structure." "New Dawn," Marcus repeated. "I have never heard of them. That you would not have," Vance said. "They operate in the shadows. They use shell companies, front organizations, and political arcane money to influence policy. Julian was their entry point to you. They targeted you because of your reputation. You are the symbol of the old Gua Road. They need to destroy you to make their vision a reality." Marcus studied the tablet. It was a dossier filled with photographs, financial records, and communication intercepts. It was a roadmap to the enemy's inner circle. He felt a cold fury rising in his chest. They had used his own son as a weapon against him. "What is their next move?" He asked. "They are going to go public," Vance said. "They've been preparing a media blitz for weeks. They have journalists in their pocket, and they are about to release a series of articles painting you as a corrupt relic. They are going to try to turn the public against you. They already tried that. Marcus said. I'm still standing. This time it is different, she warned. They have more resources. And they are not just going after you. They are going after your allies, your friends, anyone who might support you. They are going to make you a pariah. Marcus stood up and walked to the wall, his back to her. He read at the blank wall, processing the information. He had seen this kind of RFA before. It was psychological. It was a of attrition. They were trying to destroy him not by attacking his body, but by attacking his soul. That we need to hit them first, he said, turning back to face her. We need to expose them before they expose us. That I agree, Vance said. But we need a credible source. We need someone on the inside who can provide concrete, undeniable evidence of their conspiracy. We need a smoking gun. Marcus was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. I know a man. He is a former operative for the New Dawn Initiative. He left the organization under a cloud of suspicion. He has the information we need. Can we trust him? Vance asked. That he is a man of principle, Marcus said. He left because he disagreed with their methods. He will help us, but he will want something in return. What? Protection, Marcus said. He will want complete immunity from prosecution and a new identity. He will want to sap R. Vance considered this. That is a high price. It is a necessary one, Marcus said. Without his testimony, we are fighting a shadow. With it, we expose the entire conspiracy. We cut off the head of the snake. She nodded slowly. All right, I will make the arrangements. But we need to move fast. The media blitz is scheduled to begin in 48 hours. Then we have 48 hours to destroy them, Marcus said. He felt a grim determination settling over him. The battle had escalated. It was no longer about his reputation. It was about the future of the Melita the future of the nation. He was no longer just a general. He was the last line of defense. He sat back down and pulled the tablet closer. He scrolled through the dossier, studying the faces of the men who had conspired against him. Sterling, Brock, Alderman, Julian. They were all there, captured in photographs and surveillance images. They looked confident, arrogant, certain of their victory. They had no idea that their world was about to collapse. Vance spoke again. There's one more thing, General. We have intercepted communications suggesting that Sterling is planning to expand the operation. He is not just targeting you. He is targeting the entire Joint Chiefs. He wants to replace them with his own people. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The scope of the conspiracy was even larger than he had imagined. Sterling was not content with destroying one general. He wanted to reshape the entire Melita establishment. He wanted to turn the Med forces into a private loyal to him and his corporate backers. That cannot happen, Marcus said. I will not allow it. I know, Vance said. That is why I am here. I have been tracking Sterling for years. I have seen the damage he has done. He is a cancer, and we need to cut him out before it is too late. Marcus nodded. Then we do it together. You provide the intelligence. I provide the muscle. We take them down. Agreed, Vance said. She stood up and extended her hand. It is an honor to work with you, General. Marcus shook her hand. The honor is mine. Director. She left the room, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He looked at the dossier one more time, memorizing the faces and the names. He would need to know them intimately if he was going to defeat them. He had faced impossible odds before. He had survived ambushes, betrayals, and WARS. This was just another battle, and he would win it. He stood up and walked to the door. The night was still young. There was work to be done. He made his way to the secure communications room and placed a call to Captain Mills. I needed to locate the former operative, he said. His name is David Chun. He left the New Dawn Initiative 6 months ago. He is in hiding somewhere in the D.C. Array. Find him. Understood, sir, Mills replied. I will have a team on it immediately. Marcus ended the call and leaned against the wall. The weight of the night pressed down on him, but he refused to yield. He had come too far to give up now. His enemies had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated him. They had thought he would crumble under the pressure. They were wrong. He thought about Julian, about the betrayal that had rooted all. His son was lost to him, a victim of his own ambition and greed. But Marcus could not afford to dwell on that. He had to focus on the mission. He had to protect the institution he had served for 40 years. That he walked back to his office and sat down at his desk. The city outside was arcane and silent, but Marcus knew that somewhere out there, the enemy was gathering. They were planning their next move, confident in their strength. They had no idea that he was already one step ahead. He pulled up a map of the Virginia state where the summit was scheduled to take place. He studied the layout, noting the entrances, the exits, and the security positions. He needed to be ready for anything. The meeting was tomorrow night. He would be there. He closed the map and leaned back in his chair. The hours ticked by slowly, but Marcus did not sleep. He could not afford to rest. The war was far from over, and he intended to win it. The press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning in the auditorium of the National Press Club. The room was packed with reporters, camera crews, and political pundits. The New Dawn Initiative had spared no expense. They had brought in a professional media team to ensure their message was delivered with maximum impact. And Marcus was standing in a small room behind the stage, watching the chaos unfold on a monitor. His contact, the former New Dawn operative, was seated in a nondescript van outside, weaving a wire. The trap was set. All Marcus had to do was spring it. The press conference began. The stage was occupied by a well-dressed man in a suit, the spokesman for the New Dawn Initiative. He was articulate, polished, and utterly ruthless. He launched into a prepper-read statement, attacking Marcus Thorne with a litany of fabricated charges. General Marcus Thorne is a danger to this nation, the spokesman read. He has used his position to amass personal wealth, to protect corrupt officers, and to undermine the democratic principles upon which this country was founded. We have proof. We have witnesses. That the reporters leaned four-way RD, eager for the details. The spokesman gestured to a screen behind him, and a series of documents read, along with grainy photographs of Marcus in compromising positions. The documents were skillfully forged, designed to look authentic. Marcus felt his blood boil. He had to act. He stepped out a side room and walked onto the stage. The room fell silent. The spokesman read at him, his confidence shaken. General Thorne, the spokesman said, recovering his composure. This is a private event. You are not invited. I do not need an invitation. Marcus said, his voice calm and commanding. I need to correct the record. That he pulled out a small device from his pocket. It was a portable jammer. He pressed a button, and the screen behind him flickered and died. The forged documents vanished. The room was plunged into a state of digital chaos. What are you doing? The spokesman demanded. That I am exposing the truth, Marcus said. He turned to the audience. These men really are. They are part of a criminal conspiracy funded by Senator Alderman and a think tank called the New Dawn Initiative. They are trying to destroy me because I stand in the way of their ambitions. He held up his phone. I have a witness. He is a former member of the New Dawn Initiative, and he is willing to testify to their crimes. The room erupted. The spokesman tried to shout over the noise, but it was useless. Marcus had seized control of the narrative. The doors at the back of the auditorium swung open, and two plainclothes officers led in a man in a suit. It was the former operative, David Chun. He looked nervous, but he was determined. My name is David Chun, the man said, his voice trembling. I work for the New Dawn Initiative for 3 years. I was tasked with gathering intelligence to use against General Thorne. I can confirm that everything they have said about him is a lie. He pulled a folder from his jacket and held it up. I have here a complete record of their activities, including the forged documents, the bribery of journalists, and the political manipulation. I am willing to testify to all of it under oath. The room erupted again. The reporters were on their feet, shouting questions. The spokesman was frantically trying to salvage the situation, but it was too late. The trap had been sprung. Marcus turned to the cameras. The American people deserve to know the truth. The New Dawn Initiative is not a think tank. It is a criminal enterprise. and I will not rest until every single member of this organization is brought to justice. That he walked off the stage, leaving chaos in his wake. The battle was won. The enemies were exposed. But the war was not over. There were still more enemies to face, more battles to fight. He was a soldier. He would never stop fighting. The auditorium was in complete disarray. Reporters SWA remed the stage, trying to get statements from the spokesman, who was now being escorted out by security. Chen was being led away by the plainclothes officers, his face pale but resolute. And Marcus watched from the wings, his expression impassive. That his phone buzzed. It was Captain Mills. "General, we have a situation. Sterling is not at the summit. He was tipped off. He is going underground." And Marcus felt a surge of cold fury. Sterling had slipped through his fingers. He had been one step ahead, as always. But Marcus was not about to give up. "Find him," he said. "I do not see how long it takes." "Find him. We are on it." "Sir," Mills replied. "But there is more. The media blitz was not their only plan. They have a backup. They are going to release a second wave of documents. Time to hit the evening news. They are trying to drown out Chen's testimony with more lies." That Marcus clenched his jaw. He had anticipated something like this. The New Dawn Initiative was not a simple organization. It was a hydra with many heads. Cut off one, and two more would we need to get ahead of it, Marcus said. "I want a press conference of my own. Tonight, the same venue. We are going to show the world the full extent of their conspiracy." "Understood, sir," Mills said. "I will make the arrangements." Marcus ended the call and walked out of the auditorium. The hallway was crowded with journalists, but he ignored them. He had work to do. He found a quiet office and sat down, his mind racing. Sterling was the key. He was the architect of the entire conspiracy. If Marcus could find him and bring him down, the whole organization would collapse. But Sterling was a ghost, a man who had spent decades operating in the shadows. Finding him would not be easy. Marcus pulled out his tablet and reviewed the surveillance footage from the Virginia estate. The summit had been a bust. Sterling had not shown up, but the other players had been there. Brock, Alderman, a few Melita rebrass. They had all been captured on camera, their faces clear, and unmistakable. Marcus had the evidence he needed to destroy them. But Sterling was still out there. He made a call to Director Vance. "I need your help," he said. "Sterling has gone underground. I need you to use every resource at your disposal to find him." "I'm already on it," Vance replied. "I have a team tracking his financial transactions. He is using a series of encrypted accounts, but we are making progress. We'll find him. How long?" Marcus asked. 24 hours, she said. "Maybe less." Marcus nodded. "That is not fast enough. We need to flush him out. We need to put pressure on his allies. Brock, Alderman, the Melita rebrass. They know where he is. We make them talk. That is a risky move," Vance warned. "It could backfire. They could circle the wagons. Then we make them choose," Marcus said. "They can either help us, or they can go down with him. I'm going to give them that choice tonight." He ended the call and stood up. The evening press conference was his chance to put the final nail in the coffin. He would expose the entire conspiracy, name every single player, and to Sterling to come out hiding. It was a gamble, but it was the only play he had left. He walked out of the office and into the bustling hallway. The day was far from over. The battle was far from won. But Marcus Thorne was not a man who gave up. He had fought for his country his entire life. He would fight for his honor until his last breath. The following morning, the headlines were unavoidable. "General Thorne exposes conspiracy," read the Washington Post. "New Dawn Initiative revealed as criminal enterprise," Declay read the New York Times. The news cycle had turned completely in his favor. Marcus stood in his office, watching the coverage on a bank of monitors. The operation had been a success. His enemies were in retreat. But he knew it was not the end. The New Dawn Initiative was a hydra. Cut off one head, and two more would grow in its place. He was already planning his next move. His door swung open. It was Colonel Vance, the man who had betrayed him just a week earlier. He was in civilian clothes now, a shadow of his former self. He looked desperate, broken. General, Vance said, his voice shaking. I need to talk to you. Marcus looked at him with cold contempt. What do you want, Vance? I want to help you, Vance said. I know who is behind the New Dawn initiative. I know who is really pulling the strings. Marcus studied him for a long moment. He saw the fear in Vance's eyes, the desperation. He was a rat trying to flee a sinking ship. He was just as dangerous as his enemies. Who? Marcus asked. It is General Ramrod, Vance said. He is the mastermind. He was the one who approached Julian. He was the one who planned everything. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. General Ramrod was the Joint Chief of Staff. He was a close friend, a trusted colleague. The betrayal was deeper than he had ever imagined. You lying, Marcus said, his voice cold. I am not, Vance insisted. I have proof. I have recordings. I've been holding on to them, hoping I could use them as leverage. But they are coming for me, General. They are going to kill me. I need your protection. Marcus felt a storm of emotion rising in his chest. The man who had betrayed him was now offering to help him. But could he trust him? Could he trust anyone? He made his decision. You will give me the recordings, he said. You will give me everything. And then you will disap AR. You will never contact me again. Vance nodded frantically. Thank you, General. Thank you. Marcus dismissed him with a wave of his hand. He felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The final piece of the puzzle was in place. He knew who the enemy was. He knew how to destroy them. The war was not over, but the end was in sight. He picked up his phone and dialed number. I need a meeting with General Ramrod, he said. Make it happen. The battle was about to enter its final phase. The reckoning was coming. Marcus sat in his office for a long time after Vance left. STA ring at the wall. The weight of the revelation pressed down on him. Ramrod had been his friend for 30 years. They had served together, bled together, lost friends together. And now Ramrod had betrayed him. He had used Julian as a weapon, manipulated him into committing treason, and watched as Marcus was publicly humiliated. It was the ultimate act of treachery. He pulled up Ramrod's file on his tablet. The man was a decorated officer, a hero of the Gulf War, a respected leader. On paper, he was everything a general should be, but the recordings Vance had promised would tell a different story. They would reveal the true Ramrod, the man behind the mask, the man who had plotted to destroy Marcus Thorne. The hours passed slowly. Marcus did not sleep. He could not. His mind was racing, planning, strategizing. The meeting with Ramrod was set for the following morning. It would be a private meeting, just the two of them, in Ramrod's office at the Pentagon. Marcus knew it was a risk. Ramrod was a desperate man, and desperate men did desperate things. But Marcus had no choice. He had to confront him. He had to end this. At dawn, Marcus stood in front of the mirror in his office, adjusting his uniform. His medals gleamed in the morning light. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. He was ready. He walked through the corridors of the Pentagon, his steps steady and deliberate. The building was quiet at this hour, the halls empty. He reached Ramrod's office and knocked on the door. Come in. Ramrod's voice called from inside. Marcus opened the door and stepped inside. Ramrod was seated behind his desk, his face a regal mask of composure. He was a tall, imposing man with gray hair and a jaw like granite. He looked up as Marcus entered, his expression unreadable. Marcus, Ramrod said, rising. This is unexpected. What brings you here? Marcus closed the door behind him and stood in front of the desk. I know everything. Ramrod, I know about the New Dawn initiative. I know about your role in the conspiracy. I know you used my son as a pawn. Ramrod's mask cracked for a fraction of a second. It was back in place. I have no idea what you were talking about. Do not lie to me, Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. I have recordings. I have witnesses. I have enough evidence to destroy you. Ramrod read at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a ha rsh bitter sound. You always were a self-righteous basta rd, Americus. Always so sure of your own moral superiority. But you are not as clean as you think you are. I never claimed to be clean, Americus said. But I never betrayed my country. I never betrayed my friends. I never plotted a T or down the institution I swore to protect. HARMON's face twisted into a SNARL. You are a relic, Americus. A fossil. The world has moved on, but you are still stuck in the past. The Melita needs to change. It needs to adapt. And men like you are standing in the way. So you decided to destroy me. Americus said. You used my son. You turned him against me. You made him a traitor. HARMON's eyes glittered with malice. Julian was a fool. A useful fool, but a fool nonetheless. He was so eager to please, so desperate for approval. It was easy to manipulate him. All I had to do was promise him power. And he was mine. Americus felt a cold fury wash over him. He wanted to strike HARMON, to beat him until he was a bloody pulp on the floor. But he restrained himself. Violence was not the answer. The law was. You will face a court martial, Americus said. You will be stripped of your rank. You will spend the rest of your life imprisoned. HARMON laughed again. You think you can do that? You think you have the power to destroy me? You are a fool, Americus. I have friends in high places. I have allies in the media, in the government, in the Melita I have resources you cannot imagine. I do not need to imagine them, Americus said. I have already exposed them. Alderman is finished. Brock is finished. The New Dawn Initiative is finished. And now, so are you. HARMON's smile faded. He looked at Americus, his eyes narrowing. You are bluffing that I do not bluff, Americus said. He pulled out his phone and held it up. This recording is already being uploaded to my secure server. It will be sent to the Department of Justice, the Inspector General, and every major news outlet in the country. By noon, everyone will know the truth. HARMON's face drained of color. He stood up, his hands trembling. You cannot do this. I will destroy you. I will ruin you. You cannot destroy what is already gone, Americus said. My reputation is intact. My honor is intact. Yours, on the other hand, is about to be reduced to ashes. He turned and walked out the door. HARMON called out after him, his voice cracking. Americus, please, we can work something out. We can come to an arrangement. Americus stopped at the door and looked back. The arrangement is that you will face justice. HARMON. The same justice you tried to deny me. There is no deal. There is no escape. This is the end. He walked out of the office and closed the door behind him. The sound of HARMON's shouting faded into the distance. Americus walked through the corridors of the Pentagon, his head held high. He had done it. He had exposed the conspiracy. He had destroyed the enemy. The war was over. But the echoes of the battle would linger for a long time to come. He stepped out of the building and into the morning light. The city lay before him, bright and alive. He had won, but the victory felt hollow. He had lost his son, his friend, his trust in the institution he had served for 40 years. The scars of the battle would never fully heal. But he would say, RRY them with him, a reminder of the price of honor. The corridor stretched before him, empty and silent. Marcus Thorne walked without looking back. The weight of 40 years pressed on his shoulders, but his spine remained straight, his steps measured. He had done what he had come to do. HARMON was finished. Alderman was finished. The New Dawn Initiative lay in ruins, its architects exposed and humiliated. He reached the exit and pushed through the heavy glass doors. The morning air hit his face, COL and SHARP. The Pentagon loomed behind him, a monument to the institution he had served and defended. He had saved it from the rot within, but the victory tasted like ash. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it and read the single line, "You think this is over? You are wrong." Marcus STA read at the screen. The message was unsigned, untraceable. It could be anyone. A loyalist to Sterling. A remnant of the conspiracy. A new enemy he had not yet identified. The war was never truly over. There was always another battle, another shadow, another knife waiting in the arcade. He pocketed the phone and walked to his car. The city sprawled before him, indifferent to his triumph. The traffic hummed. The people went about their lives. They had no idea what had just happened in the halls of power. They would read about it in the papers, watch it on the evening news, and then forget. The world moved on. It always did. And Marcus got into the car and sat for a long moment, his hands resting on the steering wheel. He thought about Julian. His son was in a holding cell, awaiting court martial. His CA rear was over. His life was shattered. Marcus had done what he had to do, but the cost was immense. He had lost his son to ambition and greed, to the poisonous influence of men like Ramon and Sterling. He rooted the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The road stretched ahead, leading to an uncertain future. He had enemies. He had allies. He had the weight of his reputation and the SCARS of a lifetime of service. But he also had the quiet satisfaction of a job done right. He had faced the betrayers and the liars, the conspirators and the traitors. He had stood his ground, and once the drive took him through the familiar, our streets of Washington. He passed the monuments, the museums, the corridors of power he had navigated for decades. He was a part of this city, woven into its fabric. But he was also a part from it. A soldier, a general, a man who had given everything and received betrayal in return. He pulled into the driveway of his home. The house was dark, empty. Evelyn had left. He did not blame her. She had been caught in the crossfire, a casualty of the war he had fought. He sat in the CAR ring at the silent facade. The battle was over. The enemy was defeated. But the silence was deafening, and Marcus Thorne stepped out of the CAR and walked toward the front door. The wind stirred the leaves in the road. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn. He paused at the threshold, his hand on the doorknob. Behind him lay the battlefield. Ahead lay the unknown. He opened the door and stepped inside. The darkness swallowed him.